I always thought the quiet of the farm would settle something in me. Instead, it stirred everything up. It had been nearly 7 years since I left the Amish life behind. 7 years of college dorms, busy coffee shops, digital calendars, and learning how to breathe in a world that moved too fast. But every October, like clockwork, I came back. The harvest demanded it. More truthfully, he did. Eli King. Broad-shouldered, dirt under his nails, laugh like thunder on the horizon. He was the reason I hadn't completely cut ties with the community. Every time I saw his name pop up on those old scrolled letters, he insisted on sending, instead of texting. Something inside me bent backward, softening. "Reckon you'll remember how to stack hay without breaking your back?" He'd written last month. "The loft still misses you. So do I. That last part, so do I." I'd read it too many times. I didn't dare let myself wonder what he meant. The farm hadn't changed much. The cornfields still rolled out. Like golden waves toward the horizon, the barn still leaned just slightly to the left, as though listening. But Eli had changed. Or maybe I had. He met me at the gate, smirking with one corner of his mouth like he always did when he was about to say something that made me feel things I shouldn't. "You look thinner," he said, squinting in the afternoon sun. "City life. Not feeding you?" "Still stronger than you," I shot back. His grin widened, and he reached for my suitcase. Our hands brushed. I pulled back too fast, hoping he didn't notice the jolt it sent through me. That was the thing about Eli. He never knew what he was doing to me. Or maybe he did. Maybe that was part of the ache that followed me every time I left this place. The unspoken tension that lived in the space between a glance too long and a silence too full. He led me to the guest room inside the farmhouse, but my eyes kept drifting to the old barn beyond the window. The Hayloft, our hiding place since we were kids. I could still picture us up there, whispering secrets into the rafters, breathless from running or laughing or something else. I wasn't sure what this visit would bring. I told myself it was just another harvest, just another excuse to come home. But when Eli's fingers brushed my back as we passed in the narrow hallway, and he lingered a second too long before pulling away, I knew something was going to change. And maybe this time I wouldn't run from it. Eli and I had always moved in tandem, even when we didn't realize it. We grew up side by side, barn chores before dawn, schoolwork by lantern light, barefoot races down the creek bank in the summer haze. Where I turned inward, Eli blazed forward, with wide hands and easy charm. He had this way of making the world feel simple, like everything you needed could be held in the space between two hands and a shared laugh. When we were younger, he used to carve animals out of scrap wood with a pocket knife. I still had the first one he ever gave me, a clumsy-looking sparrow with a crooked wing. I never told him I kept it in my desk drawer in the city, or that I sometimes held it when I felt most out of place. Now, back on the farm, we fell into our old rhythm as if no time had passed. Eli would toss me tools like he expected me to catch them, and I always did. He cracked jokes about how soft my hands had gotten, and I teased him about his stubbornness and how his beard still grew in patchy on the left side. On the third morning, a thin veil of clouds rolled in across the hills. We were stacking bales when I looked up and said, "Sky's got that look. You sure this stuff's staying dry?" Eli wiped his brow with the back of his wrist. "Hayloft's still dry as bone, and unless you forgot, you still owe me from that. Summer you stacked the bottom row all crooked. I was 12. Still counts." We were laughing as the first drops hit. It came fast, one of those sudden Appalachian storms that turn the ground to muck in minutes. Eli grabbed my arm, without thinking, and pulled me toward the barn. "Come on," he called over his shoulder. "You'll ruin your fancy city shoes." Inside, the air smelled of hay and old wood, warm, earthy, familiar. We clambered up the creaky ladder into the loft, ducking just before Eli's head brushed the low beams. The roof rattled above us, like it might give out, but the space stayed dry. "Still the best place to wait out a storm," he said, flopping onto a pile of hay like it was a mattress. I sat down, cross-legged beside him, brushing straw off my jeans. "You always knew how to find trouble," I murmured. He turned his head toward me. "Only when I had someone to find it with." It got quiet after that, just the patter of rain on the tin roof and the occasional snap of thunder in the distance. My shoulder was a few inches from his, but it felt closer. The space buzzed with the things we never said. "You remember that time we snuck up here with blackberry moonshine?" I asked. Eli chuckled. "You coughed so hard I thought you were going to die. You kissed me on the cheek to shut me up." He turned to me then, the smile lingering but his eyes suddenly serious. "Did I?" I swallowed. "You did." A beat. 2. Then he looked away, chewing the inside of his cheek. I probably didn't even know what that meant back then. I gave a short laugh, trying to keep it light, even as my heart pounded against my ribs. Yeah, neither did I. The storm outside deepened. A gust of wind pushed through the cracks in the slats, and Eli stood to close the loft hatch. "You staying in the loft again?" he asked casually. "Didn't know that was still an option." He shrugged. "Guess it's not locked or anything. One bed, though." I hesitated. "I don't mind." He looked at me, his eyes lingering on mine just a moment too long. "Didn't figure you would." That night we'd sleep under the same roof again, just like when we were boys. But it wasn't the same. Not even close. The storm didn't let up that night. By dusk, the power in the house had flickered and died, and Eli's mother lit a few lanterns and placed them around the kitchen like we'd slipped back in time. We sat at the long wooden table, eating stew and cornbread in near silence, listening to the wind claw at the walls. I caught Eli watching me more than once, but every time I looked up, he glanced away like he hadn't. After dinner, his mother turned to us. "The guest room ceiling's leaking again," she said, fussing with a towel at her hip. "It's never right after the summer storms. You'll have to sleep out in the barn tonight, Levi." "I'm sorry, child." "It's fine," I said too, quickly. "I don't mind." Eli set his spoon down, licking his thumb. "I'll stay out there too. It's not right to let him go alone." His mother gave him a look, one of those subtle ones only Amish mothers know how to deliver. Concern and suggestion folded neatly into a single raised brow. But she didn't argue. The rain was lighter when we stepped outside, just a drizzle now, the kind that whispered instead of shouted. We carried a couple of quilts, a kerosene lamp, and Eli's lumpy old pillow. The barn was still warm from the day, and the hayloft was dry, blanketed in the faint scent of dust, clover, and something else I couldn't name, something that smelled like the past. We spread the quilts out on the flattest part of the loft, right near the edge where you could still hear the rain if you listened. Eli plopped down beside me, arms behind his head, like he didn't have a single worry in the world. Lay back too, but every nerve was lit like wire. I could feel the heat of him beside me, his shoulder a hair's breadth from mine, the weight of his presence filling the space between us like breath before a kiss. "So," he said, voice low in the quiet, "you seeing anyone?" The question landed like a drop of ink in water, spreading slowly, darkening everything. "No," I said, staring at the beams above us. "Not really my thing." "Not your thing?" He turned to look at me, propped up on one elbow. "Dating?" I hesitated. "People. The expectations. The pretending." He watched me, quiet now. In the low lantern light, his face looked different. Softer. Sadder, maybe. "Never met anyone who felt like home," I added, almost to myself. He didn't answer right away. When he finally did, his voice was careful. "Guess I don't know what that feels like." I turned my head toward him. "What, being with someone?" He gave a one-shoulder shrug. "I mean, I hear people talk about love, right? Being sure about someone. I've just never, he trailed off. Never felt that, not with the girls around here anyway. There it was. My pulse quickened. My mouth went dry. Eli shifted onto his back again, stretching his arms above his head. Sometimes I wonder if there's something wrong with me, he said into the rafters. Like, maybe I missed the part where people learn how to want the right things. I sat up, drawn by something deeper than thought. There's nothing wrong with you, Eli. He blinked up at me. Then why do I feel so off? Like I'm always on the outside of something everyone else seems to get. His words echoed too, loud in my chest. I looked at him, really looked, and saw the confusion behind his calm, the question he didn't know how to ask. Or maybe he did, and he was waiting for someone to give him permission to speak it. My fingers found the edge of the quilt. I gripped it hard. You ever think, I began, heart hammering, that maybe you're just looking in the wrong direction? Eli's gaze found mine in the dark, and it didn't let go. His throat bobbed with a swallow. What are you saying? Everything in me wanted to reach for him, to close the space between us and finally let it all fall apart or fall into place. But I couldn't. Not yet. I'm saying, I've been there too, feeling wrong for wanting what I want, feeling broken because it doesn't look the way everyone expects it to. His lips parted slightly. His brows drew together. I looked down. You ever notice how it's always been you and me? Ever wonder why? He sat up slowly. Our knees brushed. Neither of us moved. I thought it was just friendship, he said, barely above a whisper. Maybe it started that way. He looked down at our knees, then at my hand, still gripping the edge of the quilt. Slowly, hesitantly, he laid his hand next to mine. Not touching, just there. Close enough to feel the warmth. I don't know what this is, he admitted. I do, I said, voice unsteady. I've known for a while, he nodded, eyes never leaving mine. But what happens if we let it happen? I answered honestly. Everything changes. He inhaled deeply, chest rising. That scares me. It scares me too. And yet, neither of us moved away. We sat like that for a long time, our breathing the only sound aside from the soft drip of rain beyond the barn walls. The storm had passed, but something else had begun to stir, something undeniable and fragile, blooming in the quiet. That night, we slept under the same quilt. Not touching, but closer than we'd ever been. Not because we had to, but because we finally could. I don't know how long I lay there, listening to the sound of Eli's breathing. It was steady, but just light enough to tell me he wasn't asleep. I wasn't either. The space between us, just a few inches wide, felt like a canyon. I kept rehearsing the words in my head. Things I wanted to say, things I'd bitten back 1,000 times. How do you tell your best friend, your only friend in a world that doesn't quite know what to make of you, that the way you look at him has changed, that it's been changing for years? My fingers twitched against the quilt, aching to reach for him, to close the distance. But fear rooted me. What if I was wrong? What if that hand he'd placed near mine earlier was just confusion, curiosity? What if I ruined everything? Then he spoke. Levi? My heart skipped. Yeah? He didn't answer right away. I could hear him turning, the rustle of hay under the quilt. When I finally looked over, he was facing me, head propped up on his hand. His eyes searched mine. You remember last spring? When we climbed that silo, and I almost slipped off the side? I huffed a laugh, unsure where this was going. Yeah, I thought I was going to have a heart attack watching you dangle there. You grabbed me, he said, his voice soft. I didn't even ask. You just reacted. I blinked, unsure how to respond. Of course I did. You're always doing that, he said, cutting in. Looking out for me. Seeing things I don't even know I'm feeling. Like tonight, in the loft. You said something about looking the wrong direction. Yeah. He stared at me so long, I started to squirm. Then he whispered, Am I looking in the right one now? The world cracked wide open. I sucked in a breath, sharp and cold. Eli. He reached over then, not much, just enough for his fingers, to brush mine. A whisper of a touch. Featherlight, but my entire body lit up like it had been waiting for it. I don't know what this means, he said. But when I'm with you, I feel like I can breathe, like I don't have to explain myself. You don't, I whispered, barely able to get the words out. Not to me. He moved his hand fully into mine, fingers curling, uncertain, clumsy, but deliberate. I couldn't stop the emotion from rising. It built in my chest like water behind a dam. I blinked, and a tear slipped free. I've loved you for a long time, Eli. The words came from somewhere deep, raw and aching. My voice cracked on the last syllable. I didn't mean to say it, like that. But once it was out, there was no pulling it back. He didn't flinch. Instead, he squeezed my hand. I don't know if I even understand what love like that is, he said. But if it feels like needing you near, like missing you before you're even gone, then I think I've been feeling it too. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. The silence wrapped around us again, not awkward now, but weighted. Sacred. I sat up slowly, pulling the quilt with me. He did too. We faced each other, knees brushing under the blanket, the lantern's dim glow dancing across his face. His eyes never left mine. I used to pray it would go away, I admitted. The feelings. I thought maybe, if I prayed hard, enough I could, I don't know, undo it. He nodded. I used to pray not to be different, to feel the same things my brothers did. But every time a girl looked at me, I just felt wrong, empty. And I thought maybe I was broken. You're not, I said. Neither of us is. He reached up then, slow as moonrise, and brushed a strand of hair from my forehead. His fingers lingered, just long enough to set every nerve on fire. I leaned into the touch, eyes fluttering, closed. When I opened them, he was closer. His breath ghosted over my cheek. Can I? He asked. I nodded, and then he kissed me. It was soft, uncertain, the kind of kiss that's more question than answer. But God, it was everything. I leaned in, kissing him back, our lips moving in slow, careful sync. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't desperate. It was real. It was the kind of kiss that rewrote the meaning of home. When we finally pulled apart, foreheads resting against each other, we both exhaled shakily. I've never done that before, Eli whispered, almost laughing with disbelief. I know, I murmured, but you didn't have to tell me. He smiled, small and unsure, and I realized he was trembling. I wrapped my arms around him, pulling him close. He let himself fall into me, our bodies fitting together like two halves of something we hadn't known we were missing. We stayed like that, curled in the hay, the lantern flickering beside us, the storm outside long since past. Eli's voice came again, muffled against my chest. What does this mean now? For us? I kissed the top of his head. It means we figure it out. Together. He nodded, then looked up at me. You're not going to leave, are you? Not a chance, I said. His arms tightened around my waist. We didn't sleep for a long time, not because we were talking, but because we didn't want to close our eyes and miss a second of the quiet, sacred rightness that had finally settled between us. And when we did finally drift off, it was tangled together beneath that old quilt, wrapped in hay and lantern light, and the beginning of something neither of us had words for yet. But we would. Eventually. I woke to the sound of birdsong filtering through the slats in the hayloft walls, morning light casting golden stripes across Eli's face. For a moment I thought it had all been a dream, that soft confession, the warmth of his lips against mine, his arms around me like he'd always belonged there. But then he stirred beside me, eyelids fluttering open. His gaze found mine, and a slow, crooked smile stretched across his face. "Morning," he mumbled, voice still thick with sleep. "Morning," I whispered, brushing a bit of straw from his hair. We just looked at each other for a while, and it was like seeing him for the first time, except I'd known him all my life. Only now it felt like I was allowed to look, really look, and not feel ashamed. He rolled onto his back, stretching until his shirt pulled up just enough to reveal the soft slope of his stomach. My face flushed before I could stop it. He caught me looking and smirked. "See something you like?" I groaned, throwing a handful of hay at him. "You're insufferable." "I'm charming," he said, grinning. "Just no one's noticed till now." "I've always noticed." That shut him up, at least for a moment. Then he propped himself up on one elbow and looked at me, more serious now. "So, what do we do next?" I sat up, hugging my knees. "I don't know. I mean, this can't exactly be public. Not here." He nodded slowly. "I know. Not yet." The silence between us wasn't heavy this time, just thoughtful. He reached over and laced our fingers together. "But we've got this," he said, voice quiet. "You and me. That's enough for now, right?" Looked down at our hands. "Yeah, it is." We climbed down from the loft eventually, legs stiff and hair full of straw. No one was around yet, just the quiet hush of morning and the scent of dew on the grass. The world felt different somehow, like it had softened overnight, made room for us. Back at the house, I handed him his forgotten hat from yesterday. He took it with a little smirk. "You kept it?" "I did," I said. "Didn't smell too bad either." He threw it at my chest, laughing, the kind of easy, head-thrown-back laugh that made his whole face light up. God, I was in trouble. Later, after chores and breakfast, we found ourselves walking the field fence, shoulders bumping occasionally, neither of us pulling away. "You think you'll ever tell your folks?" he asked, staring out toward the ridgeline. "Someday," I said, "when I know they'll listen." He nodded. "Me too, just not yet." I glanced at him, heart swelling. "But we'll get there." He smiled without looking at me. Together. There was a quiet kind of peace in that word. A weight lifted from my chest. For the first time in what felt like forever, the future wasn't something to dread. It was something to reach for. As we rounded the bend by the old willow, he grabbed my hand. No warning, no hesitation. Just laced his fingers with mine and kept walking like it was the most natural thing in the world. And maybe it was. Maybe. Despite everything we'd been taught, everything we feared, this, whatever it was, wasn't unnatural at all. We didn't talk much the rest of the walk. We didn't need to. The breeze carried the scent of clover and dust. The sky stretched, wide above us, impossibly blue. And for the first time in my life, I felt like I was exactly where I was meant to be, right beside him. It was near sunset when Eli brought me back to the hayloft. He didn't say much, just jerked his head toward the barn after dinner, that familiar glint of mischief in his eyes. I followed him across the field without question, the sky turning, every shade of peach and lavender behind him, the way it always did this time of year. We climbed the ladder side by side, more at ease now, less awkward in our silence. My boots thudded softly on the wooden planks as I stepped inside, the scent of dried hay and old wood wrapping around me like a memory. I figured we ought to, I don't know, mark it or something. Eli said, reaching into the small satchel slung over his shoulder. He pulled out a battered pocket knife and a scrap piece of wood he must have cut from one of the fence posts. "I've been practicing my carving," he said, suddenly shy. "Don't laugh." I wouldn't dare. He held up the piece to show me. It was rough, a little uneven, but unmistakably ours. 2 initials, J plus E, surrounded by a simple wheat stalk etched along the bottom. He ran his thumb across it nervously. "I know it's not much," he said, "but I thought maybe we could leave it here. Like a part of us." I swallowed hard, heart thick in my throat. "It's perfect." He handed it to me, and I added, "One more thing." I took the knife and carved a tiny star at the top, a symbol we used as kids when signing notes to each other, a secret mark, one we never told anyone else about. Eli watched me with something raw in his eyes. When I finished, I handed it back. He nodded, quietly emotional, and slipped it between 2 boards in the wall, nestled just beside the old horseshoe we'd once hung there for good luck. For a long moment, we stood in the dim amber light, not speaking. Then he turned to me. "You think you'll ever leave here?" he asked. I looked out the slatted wall to where the fields rolled on endlessly, the last rays of light turning the corn golden. "I used to want to. Thought I had to, if I ever wanted to be me." I glanced back at him. "But now? I think I just didn't want to feel alone." He reached for my hand. "You're not." "I know." A long breath settled between us. "I'm not saying I've got it all figured out," he added, his voice softer. "But I know this." He squeezed my fingers. "I want you around when I do." I laughed, a quiet, grateful sound. "That might be the closest thing to a love letter I'll ever get from you." "Oh, just wait. I've got terrible poems hidden in my sock drawer." "Eli!" He laughed too, the sound carrying through the rafters like a song only we could hear. Outside, the sky darkened, fireflies blinking to life around the barn. The kind of night that seemed endless and wrapped in promise. We sat side by side on the ledge, legs dangling, our shoulders brushing now and then. We didn't have all the answers. We didn't know what would come next, not really. But we had this moment, this place, and each other, and that felt like enough to start with. Eli leaned his head against mine, his voice a whisper in the growing dark. "So, same time tomorrow?" I smiled, my heart already saying yes. "Yeah," I murmured. "Same time tomorrow." And just like that, the future didn't feel so far away. It felt like it had already begun.